So today I want to give you some overview of what's the current state of Ethereum, what's happening. If you remember, why is there an Ethereum in the first place? Because we had Bitcoin. Vitalik Buterin at some point noticed that actually if you want to build a blockchain-based application, you always need to bootstrap a network. You need to build a system and then convince some miners to secure the blockchain by mining tokens. And he thought, well, what about if we have a more generalized blockchain where you can build applications on top? And while this was the initial idea, what emerges is an ecosystem of interoperable applications on top of these Ethereum EVM rails, which have synergies. And so whenever there's a new application on top of Ethereum, that's also beneficial to all other applications on the Ethereum ecosystem. So it's like kind of exponential growth. Whenever there's more users to one application, that's also beneficial to the other applications. And that's at the core of the system. The value proposition of Ethereum is synergy. And one of the main parts of that is a standard that we have in the Ethereum platform. It's called ERC20 token standard. This allows you to simply develop a smart contract which implements this standard, and then that token that's implemented by this smart contract can directly be used with any wallet, can be exchanged on any exchange, and works with most dApps which accept ERC20 tokens for whatever functionality. And this standard has seen quite some adoption. If you look at CoinMarketCap, which is a website which lists blockchain-based applications or projects which have a token which has some value, then you can see that 75% in the top 20 list of these applications are built on Ethereum and especially use the ERC20 token standard. And that's why some in the ecosystem say this ERC20 token standard is the killer application that we've seen on Ethereum so far, because it was successfully used for many applications and especially for crowdfunding them. And I don't know how many of you followed that, but on the Ethereum platform, a lot of projects get built, and then if they see crowdfunding, these crowdfunding events, these token sales are often sold out within minutes, and these companies can raise 5 to 12 million. So we just had Canosa this week. At the beginning of the week, they sold tokens, only 5% of the tokens, say it's like 5% of the company. In 20 minutes, they raised $12.5 million worth of Ether and got a valuation of $300 million, which is probably appropriate for a project which is very successful, but always there's some risk involved, and it's a bit uncertain what the future brings. Fat Protocols is a term coined, I think, by Unisquare Ventures, one of their employees. A protocol is a standard like TCP/IP or SMTP for email, and for these standards they don't capture value, but instead they're used by applications built on top, and these applications can be very successful, very valuable. In the blockchain space, that's different. If you have standards based or protocols based on blockchain technology, then they are built on financial rails and they can capture value more easily because they can be tokenized, or access to their functionality can be controlled by tokens, which then can have some value. So, say whenever there's a successful application on top of Ethereum, that not only makes this application valuable, but also the platform it runs on, right? And so whenever there's a successful application on top of Ethereum, that also makes Ethereum more valuable. And the same goes for protocols that we define on top of Ethereum. And therefore, a lot of the projects that we're currently seeing in the space, they're actually so-called protocols or protocol tokens. And I'm going to present some of them. We call these mostly dApps, decentralized applications. What is a dApp? It's based on two components. It's based on a set of smart contracts on the Ethereum blockchain, and it usually comes with a user interface, which makes it easy to access it. And the user interface should be stored on some decentralized file system like IPFS, something that cannot easily be manipulated. And this together is called dApp. So let's look at Melon port. Melon port is a platform aimed at, I think, hedge funds, which helps them to be more efficient when managing portfolios. Initially, I think digital asset portfolios, like everything that can be tokenized on Ethereum blockchain. Later, they're also looking or I think they're assuming that more real-world assets can be tokenized and represented on Ethereum blockchain. Actually, the guy who initiated it, Retro Tinkler, he was one of our interns earlier last year. Then we already mentioned that Canosa's very successful token launch. They're doing prediction markets. A prediction market is basically a binary bet on a future outcome. Say if you have a good idea whether Deutsche Bank will be not bankrupt by the end of the year, then you could go to a prediction market and bet there according to your beliefs or whatever inside knowledge you have. There's another prediction market based on Ethereum that's called Augur, also a very interesting project. Something else, stablecoins. So one of the problems with cryptocurrencies is that their volatility is not to everyone's taste. And for example, if you use Ether to bet in a prediction market, you actually have two bets running. One is on the event that you're betting on, and the other one is that the price of Ether doesn't move to your disfavor, right? And if you use a stablecoin, in this case, Maker tries to peg it or to make it not volatile against the special drawing rights as defined by the IMF currency basket, then you at least don't have to worry about the volatility. So many see that stablecoins is something that we really need in this ecosystem to see more adoption. Gulam is a project. They try to trade computing power peer-to-peer. Also, based on Ethereum, they're around very long. DigixDAO is another project. They tokenize gold, and they're your counterparty actually. So why would you trust them? Why would you do that on the blockchain? It's kind of there you come closer to a stable coin because gold is not as volatile as say Bitcoin or Ether. But they work with the best standards that the gold industry has when it comes to custodianship of gold coins or whatever. Nice guys based in Singapore, and I think they were the first who had a successful token launch, right?
Yes.
Good. First DAO. Okay. Then there's Singular DTV. That's a funny project because it's just, as I see it, it's just like a company whose shares got tokenized and were offered on the Ethereum blockchain. It's a project from Consensus. And they're in the, say, entertainment industry. They want to be the decentralized next Netflix. When we talk about entertainment, the blockchain offers artists to get directly compensated. You could use the blockchain to collect the fees or payments for the content and then directly distribute that to the producers of the content. Uport is an important project because it's solving one of the problems with identity on the blockchain, especially the question you often hear is, what happens if I lose my keys? Then it's like losing your passwords and you cannot recover it. Then you have no access anymore to your identity, whatever it is. And that on that identity could be your reputation points, but it could also be your money if you have that on a blockchain. So they're trying to solve that problem. There's 3 projects around peer-to-peer storage: StoreJ, Swarm, and IPFS. When it comes to peer-to-peer storage, you want to be very sure that your content is around when you log in the next time that someone stores that, and therefore these peers need to be incentivized. Therefore, it's nice if you have some way to pay them. Again, blockchain is helpful here. Notary, that's actually at the core of blockchains. That's what they're really good at. They can timestamp data. And actually that's what happens, what's at the core of Bitcoin. It timestamps who has how many tokens on the blockchain. And FactCom is a system to make that, to scale it a bit so that you can have really many timestamps per second. And they look especially into property ownership. There's a lot of countries in the world which have no good registries for property, and FactCom is one of the companies trying to solve that. FactCom actually was initially based on Bitcoin, but now they also added Ethereum as their underlying platform. First Blood is in the esports business. Not sure why that's a good blockchain use case. Most likely because it's kind of betting. And whenever you have betting, then a lot of regulatory issues, same with prediction markets, might prevent your potential customers to access your system. On the blockchain, things are a bit more relaxed at the moment. There's two projects, no, actually three at least, about digital rights management, Ujo and Jack and Media Chain. Not only digital rights management, also about how the producers of the content get rewarded. Social networks, that's actually an interesting one. We talked about the Fed protocols. Currently, Facebook, Uber, Airbnb, eBay, they all are in the lucky situation that they have a monopoly on the social network that they actually provide only access to, but which emerges when users interact. They capture all the value. If you instead have these protocols in an open way, open protocols, and say structure all the data, the relationships the users have to each other on a blockchain in an open manner, then instead that value is captured on a blockchain, or rather there might not be any value at all, or at least it might be evenly accessible by anyone who wants to provide an interface to that data. So we have more competition on these nowadays closed platforms. And Akash.world is one of these examples. Governance is a big issue on blockchain. So if you have, for all of these projects, the question is always, say, if there's a million of users using these smart contracts, how can they be upgraded? How can the protocol be upgraded? Who makes these decisions? And therefore we need governance tools. A lot of them are structured around, I assume, liquid democracy style techniques. And these projects mentioned here, they're all a bit different, but a different focus, but I would cluster them in the category of governance tools. Decentralized exchanges, I briefly mentioned them earlier. There's two. One is called Ether Delta. One is called, actually not Maker, but Oasis Stacks, but it's related to the Maker project. And one is done by Brainwatt. It's called Radix. And there's plenty of more DApps. If you want to see a full overview, there's dapps.ethercast.com, and they currently list more than 411 DApps. I'd assume mostly of them are not actively developed, but nonetheless, it's quite impressive what was started and is happening in the Ethereum ecosystem. Okay, these have been DApps which are on the mostly public Ethereum blockchain. But there's also some industry players looking into the Ethereum stack. Could be the public blockchain, could be just the Ethereum technology. Recently, the Ethereum Alliance was announced. Alex is going to tell us more about this. There's a bank called Santander. They actually plan to issue Santander IOUs, that would be, say, euros, where you have Santander as the counterparty, which is not too bad, on the Ethereum blockchain. So that would be stablecoins issued by a bank. And they're also, I think, looking into correspondent banking use cases that they want to use the Ethereum platform for. Recently there was a consortium for IoT announced. Why blockchain for IoT? Some people say if you have no open protocols for IoT and everything is run by SAP, for example, in their data centers, that would be, assume a smart city completely run by SAP, that would be a big honeypot for hackers, and it could be a security nightmare. You might not want to, probably, most likely you don't want that. And a blockchain are seen, especially by IBM, as a good fit to solve that problem. Energy is a subsidiary from RWE, I think. And they have another sub-project called Share and Charge. So they have charging stations for electric vehicles, and there you actually pay with tokens on which the payments go or are facilitated on the Ethereum blockchain, and they work with a bank which also tokenized euros and put them on the Ethereum blockchain. So you're using euros represented as tokens on the Ethereum blockchain to charge your car. Grid Singularity, there's a typo, sorry for that, and the Energy Web Foundation, they are building a consortium to use blockchains and open protocols on, especially here, the Ethereum blockchain technology, to build a platform that can be used in the energy space. One of the main applications in the energy space is probably peer-to-peer trading. So there's big shifts in the energy industry as we have more renewables, and these renewables are traditionally owned by homeowners, by private persons who probably can produce energy, obviously also consume energy, but also store energy, because we have storage capacity soon in many households. Also your car, if it's an electric car, can store some energy. So you can trade energy with your neighbors, with people in your town, and you don't have to involve the big utilities anymore. And if you want to do peer-to-peer trading, you need an infrastructure, and again, it should be open, and their blockchain is a good fit. And that's what this Energy Web Foundation, which has actually very big utilities as participants, is about. I think you will learn more about this project in the coming weeks. Microsoft is a big supporter of Ethereum. They, I think, donate to Ethereum. They're part of the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, and they make it easy to start Ethereum clients on their Azure cloud. United Nations, they just announced that the World Food Program is looking into building more accountable ways to distribute aid in the world. But actually there's 6 more departments in the United Nations currently looking into blockchain-based systems. Dubai announced they want to be a completely blockchain-based smart city by 2020. We'll see. Consensus is helping here. Yesterday, Spotify bought MediaChain. MediaChain is built on Ethereum. Today, I saw this. Google is also prototyping something on the Ethereum blockchain, but well, everyone is doing prototypes, so take this with a grain of salt. Okay, what about the future? How will the next 3 years evolve for Ethereum? Technology-wise, there's a roadmap, so I can tell you we are looking into proof of stakes so that we don't need energy consuming mining anymore, but instead people vote with and have some stake and vote on state updates and thereby secure the blockchain. An important thing is scalability. There's 2 approaches, sharding and Raiden, which we are building, and both are needed. And I think to have private transactions, private data on blockchain is also a major advancement that we will see. So for technology, it's easy to predict what will happen. For the adoption side, for me, it's hard to say. So currently looks quite good. There's a lot of momentum. Things are moving on faster and faster. But it's hard to predict where we will be in 2 years. I think that's it for my slides. Thank you.